How are you feeling?
Wait, hold on.
No, that's Wednesday. Wednesday, yep. That's what I heard.
There's a 4 to 5
Send somebody else.
Okay, cell phones to stun.
Next item. I want to hear a tell back out.
Oh, there's the familiar face.
That's funny.
Wow, so appreciate it. Really beat that.
Well, it's 5:30.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay, the meeting will come to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Deputy Mayor Pelosi,
Here.
Councilmember Baggett,
Here.
Councilmember Brown,
Here.
Councilmember DeCoursey,
Here.
Councilmember Holman,
Here.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel,
Here.
Councilmember Wales.
Here.
Okay, another study session will be behind us in probably, what, 3 hours? No, I'm kidding. You don't have to be here 3 hours. Maybe staff does.
Kick him out of the shed.
Okay, council, are there any announcements, reports, and/or presentations? I don't see any. All right. Agenda items for council discussion. 3A, draft ordinance number 6727. All right. Please address the council, introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mayor Backus, council members. I'm Amber Price, right-of-way specialist with the Public Works Department. Draft ordinance number 6727 is for franchise agreement number FRN 19-0014. It's for New Singular Wireless PCS LLC to be able to construct a wireless telecommunications network within the city's right-of-way. The applicant's facilities would provide personal wireless services, data communication services, utilizing microcells, minor facilities, and small cell facilities throughout the city. The applicant has requested a citywide franchise as specific siting locations are still being determined. Generally, the facilities will be located on PSE power poles or city-owned poles in the right-of-way. Siting on city-owned poles would require a license agreement with the city. The franchise authorizes the Public Works Director to negotiate and execute any license agreements for the use of the city-owned poles. Final locations, plans, engineering, construction schedules, and restoration of the right-of-way would be approved and reviewed through the city's permitting processes that are a requirement of the franchise. A public hearing to consider the franchise is scheduled for Tuesday, September 3rd. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the proposed franchise.
John.
Did the city get anything economical fee for granting this franchise?
We are able to charge an application fee for the franchise application, and we are able to recover our administrative costs annually. As far as if the applicant sites on city-owned poles, the FCC has capped what the city can obtain for that. I believe they capped it at $270 per year per pole. So that's what we're able to recover.
Okay.
John. Claude.
So we have the tree trimming clause in the agreement. And typically, some of these companies have a little more of an aggressive approach to trimming trees. Do we have any kind of a standard they need to follow when they do tree trimming?
The tree trimming is generally approved through the construction permit process, so our construction inspectors look at those permits and are looking at that.
Okay.
Anything else, council? So what is our annual cumulative fee that the city gets from the franchise agreement on that average?
We're able to recover our administrative costs, so we run a report based on how much time staff spends reviewing that franchise agreement throughout the year. It's based on time that staff charges towards that agreement. I would have to pull a report to give you an idea of what we would be charging, but it's actual administrative costs.
Are we handling this the same way other cities would handle these franchise agreements?
I'm going to defer to Ingrid on that one.
Yeah, so we handle these types of franchise agreements similar to how other agencies do this. We are allowed to basically get the application fee for the first time that they apply, and then when they renew their franchises. And then, as Amber said, you're talking about a few hours of staff time each year that we can recuperate from the franchise.
Have we ever, here's where I'm coming from. Have we ever looked at these now and then again to see if the fees that are being received are reasonable?
So again, we charge for actual time. So even with the application fee, we charge, I believe it's a $5,000, $5,300 minimum franchise fee.
Ingrid, can you move the microphone closer to you?
Sure. So we do a $5,300 franchise fee, and then if our staff time exceeds that, we actually charge them for that increase as well for putting a franchise in place. And then we charge them for the administrative costs, the actual staff time that gets done on each franchise. So they are the actual costs that we can charge.
Does the council understand that?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's happy? Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to go to 3B, one-stop shop approach. Ms. Hinman.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. For the record, Dana Hinman, Director of Administration, and
Freshly returned from the wilds of Alaska.
the wilds of Alaska. Yeah, we saw whales and otters and things like that, and it was very fun. So what we are presenting to you tonight, and I do say we because it's been an all-hands-on-deck effort, is the possible future of services in Auburn. Many of you, Councilmember Wales specifically, I know, was working on this many years ago. 10 or more years ago, the city had a desire to create a one-stop shop, if you will, of human services, which would be co-located services that would allow for those that needed services in Auburn to be able to conveniently access the things that they needed. And as we know, as a growing city, we have certainly developed a higher need for those services. And you may recall earlier this year that we did have to move our overnight sheltering back to Veterans Memorial Park. The previous location was going to be reutilized by Valley Cities. We do still have the Day Resource Center on their site, but the overnight sheltering was temporarily moved. And pretty much about that time, Mayor Backus put the charge out to staff to really drill down and see what we could do. And the first thing we did is we asked our real estate services to try to get us in contact with the owners of the property that was formerly the Sports Page location. That has been vacant for the most part, with the exception of 3 small businesses in there, and asked them if they would be interested in leasing the property to us, where we would then be able to develop out more of locating services in that space. And we did write out a brief for you all to consider. We have started the negotiations with the property owner, and that is the first thing that we would bring before you for council action, would be to give the mayor the authority to continue to negotiate lease terms on that building as we continue to develop out a business and operating plan for the site. We are modeling this around another well-oiled machine in Redmond called the Together Center. I provided you a little bit of information in your packet on the Together Center. It's generally the same concept in that many years ago, back in the 90s, in the city of Redmond, some nonprofits came together to actually purchase a site in Redmond. It's basically kind of a strip mall type location that we are looking at. And what I have here for you is just basically their campus map. They're of course very large. They've been around for over 20 years, and in fact they are going to be bulldozing their site and building something bigger and better in the near future. But you can see the listing of agencies that they do have on their current site. And it is, generally that same idea of ensuring that there is a co-location of services so that those in need can get access to those services in the easiest and most efficient way. We know that those that need services, having the warm handoff, being able to quickly access things, not have to travel all over town, all of those things that many have to do in this day and age, just makes getting them the help they need a little bit more difficult. So I just provide this to you by way of example. It is kind of a template that we are looking for, but of course every community is different. And then what we also provided you is basically the real estate information from the developer, the Auburn Shops. It's been for lease for quite some time. It's about 23,000 square feet, give or take. And we are in the process of securing potential tenants, funding, and business and operational models, and all of those things that would be required to stand something like this up in our community. So it's a big dream that's been in this community for a long time, and we kind of feel like we can really move the needle on that with this opportunity. The business or the property owners are very interested in helping the city with this. They've been fabulous to work with. They're a family-owned, just a family that owns the property, so it's not a large conglomerate or anything like that. And they have deep interest in the mission and helping us move this forward. So. With that, I will entertain any questions and either answer them myself or facilitate with my team members any questions that you may have.
Mr. Holman.
Current zoning.
Current zoning, Mr. Tate.
It is zoned heavy commercial, so we've looked at it from a zoning perspective, and we've looked at it from a building structural perspective, to ensure that occupancy would be consistent with the proposed use and checks all the boxes.
Excellent.
Mr. Baggett.
Dana, is there any thoughts to the Auburn Food Bank?
Yes, you'll notice they're probably in the room behind me.
I did.
So
Smiling face. It's hard to miss.
Yes, there have been thoughts with that. Those conversations have been ongoing. And so they have been an invited tenant, but of course it's up to the organization and the board of directors to make that final decision.
News at 11, right?
Yes.
Margot.
Now that you've brought up the topic of potential tenants, we have across the street Yolanda, what's the name of that?
Christ Community Free Clinic?
Yes.
Christ Fruit.
Have they been offered an opportunity to consider it? And one that would need some help, but we should because they're in such dire straits, is pregnancy aid.
Both great suggestions, and so those will be just kind of
Meetings are
ongoing conversations. And if you look at, and I can provide you more information, Together Center, for example, they state as part of their mission that they will offer below market rental to nonprofits for the specific purpose to help that nonprofit be successful. So if we're leasing the property or essentially the landlords of the property, we've been working with legal on how we can work out those tenant agreements for the different agencies.
And the meeting with Christ Community Free Clinic is upcoming, and when Tammy gets back, pregnancy aid is on the list of those to be scheduled.
Perfect.
Mr. DeCoursey.
Yeah, one quick question and a statement on this. So then in the narrative here, you mentioned a bullet point, when court is not in session, provide classrooms. So I'm just curious as to the court process in relation to this. And is it only when court is not in session, or is it able to be used?
So we have approached King County courts to host a community court in this space. So the community court typically only happens once a week. And then in those days where that space is not being utilized for court, it could be utilized for other things. For example, at the Together Center, they have a room that's set up with some phones and desks and things that is shared space for people that might not want to be there full time, but they program it with other things like job training or DSHS or SSA or different agencies to come in, and they have it scheduled to know when certain people will be there as well for a small fee, and then you can offer more services at different times.
And just a statement on this, this is exciting. I mean, looking at the opportunity of putting all these services, in one spot, very visible spot actually, but allowing a number of providers to be able to come in to serve more people, and looking at what we have expended so far out of the budget and the opportunity to do more, this is just right on target. So great work.
Thank you.
Wanda.
I also wanted to echo what Mr. DeCoursey said is overdue. This wraparound service, because I remember when I first came in, that was something that we were really talking about, and also including the veterans to be, a wraparound service. So when I heard about it, I was really excited about it because, like I said, it's overdue. And I've been talking about it to some other individuals, and this weekend there was the event that I went to. They would like to meet with the mayor because their place is ripping at the seams, and they're looking for a place to hold an office. So they're going to be contacting you about a place. So it's getting out there, and people are excited. So thank you for getting this to come.
And what's nice is, what is Mayor, the quote you used, good governments borrow, great governments steal. But we're stealing from ourselves, really. I mean, there was a really good body of work developed back, a dozen years ago, and then the recession hit, and we just weren't able to move forward with it. So we have access to all that. It's in our files. A lot of things were pro forma. A lot of ideas were vetted with a consulting group. So what's nice is that while it's a really heavy lift, it's not quite as heavy based on previous work that was done by previous administration and councils.
Mr. Holmer.
Well, it checks all my boxes, has access to public transportation, it's on a bus line, has a large parking lot, it's in a commercial zone adjacent to a thoroughfare, it's not in a residential area, and it's got the right zoning. So I would check off, and if asked, would authorize the mayor to negotiate.
Okay, any further questions, council?
Just
Right, yes,
Wait, will we
Yolanda.
get a list of all the individuals that are considered of being part of this?
So once we have those conversations, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Now we're going to go to a hot topic. 3C, 2019 fireworks report, Mr. Pearson and Company.
All right. Well, good evening. For the record, Chief Bill Pearson with Auburn PD. With me tonight is Patrol Commander Dan O'Neill. What we're going to share with you is some of our efforts this year and during our fireworks emphasis, some days before, but most importantly, the day of the 4th of July and beyond. I'm going to let Commander O'Neill do this. He was the commander directly responsible and ran the show that night. I actually got to tag along with Dan on the 4th of July, and it worked out really great. So hopefully we'll go through this quickly and get to some of your questions. So.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for inviting us to share the results of our 4th of July emphasis with you. In 2019, our objectives were very similar to our objectives in 2018. Again, we had a zero tolerance for possession and discharge of fireworks. We continued our efforts to improve communication with representatives from the Muckleshoot Indian tribe, and we were proactive in the fireworks controls. On the between June 24th and July 5th, we had 6 officers that worked a total of 34 hours on proactive fireworks emphasis. We had 6 officers and 1 sergeant assigned to the discharge area on July 4th. We had 14 officers and 2 sergeants assigned to citywide emphasis. We split the city in half and had 7 up north with a sergeant and 7 in the south end with a sergeant. And then we had 2 officers assigned to cover the city parks. Our calls for service from 11 a.m. on July 4th until 8 a.m. on July 5th. Increased a little bit from 2018 to this year, from 154 last year to 172. As you can see, our peak year over the last 5 was in 2017 with 181 calls, and our lowest year was 2016 with 114 calls. This year, there was a drop in calls in some of the districts, while some of the districts increased. The 1 district went from 24 to 16. The 2 district went from 34 to 45. The 3 district had a significant increase from 13 to 39. The 4 district decreased a little bit from 30 to 25. And then the 5 district increased from 19 to 22. And there was a noticeable decrease in the 6 from 34 to 25. Compared to the other valley cities, Kent had a decrease from last year to this year of 193 to 174. Renton had a decrease, as did Federal Way. Tukwila had a small increase from 45 to 57, but we had the largest increase of the other valley cities. This year, from June 1st to July 5th, we had a total of 390 firework related calls. We had 6 written cases and 6 arrests made. That was a decrease from 2018 where we made 8 arrests, had 7 cases written, and our calls increased from 288 to 390. When you compare last year to this year from June 1st to July 5th, you can see that calls had decreased in the 1, increased in the 2, increased in the 3, the 4, the 5, and the 6. This year, we confiscated 3,179 separate firework items. That was a significant increase from 2018. This year, the firework stands closed at 2,200 hours. That's 10 p.m. after they ran out of product. We didn't have any officers injured this year. Peak activities were again consistent with previous years. of 9 p.m. to midnight. This year, we put an emphasis on education through several social media posts leading up to the 4th and including the 4th. And our city parks, we were able to effectively control the amount of debris that resulted. Our plan for 2019, or I guess 2020 now, is to do more advertising and education with social media and press releases. We're going to try and partner with the Parks Department to get the parks closed and locked at dark. We're going to keep the discharge area open after the stands run out of product so that there's a designated place to discharge fireworks. One thing we noticed this year is as soon as the stands closed, the discharge area got closed, and then folks who had purchased fireworks had nowhere to go discharge them. We're also going to look at the possibility of getting a reader board out on Auburn Way South to let patrons know when the discharge area is closed. This year it created quite a traffic jam when folks were coming from other valley cities to go up to the discharge area to light off their fireworks, not knowing that the discharge area was already closed. And then we're gonna try and meet with private property owners, encourage them to get barricades to close access to their parking lots. A lot of folks were buying fireworks up on the stands and then come down to private businesses along Auburn Way and using the parking lots to discharge fireworks. What questions do you have?
I have a question. I live up on Mount Koshoot, and is this the number 6? Okay, I am still getting complaints about the fireworks, and one of them that was just brought up to my attention is that these people are using the city right-of-way to set off these fireworks. And one of them sent me some pictures, and I didn't get a chance to print them out, of the people from across the street from them. They were using the orange cones and shooting fireworks out of that and shot it towards their house. It caused a little argument when the owner from the house that got hit with the fireworks went over there, and the person that did it didn't even live in that home. And so I'm getting still a lot of complaints about stuff up there and about calling the police, and the police didn't show up. They're very upset up there. We were wondering, can you still arrest those people that are launching off the roads? They're not in their driveway. They're out on city roads. And that was one of the questions that was asked to me, and I don't know, because, everybody's saying that that's reservation. And so I just would like some answers on that, if you could answer that.
One thing that is a difficult challenge that we face during our fireworks emphasis is establishing probable cause to make an arrest or cite somebody or charge them. When somebody is discharging fireworks, it's something that we have to witness and see. It's not a misdemeanor exception, whereas somebody can witness a crime and then provide us with a statement or evidence of the crime. We actually have to witness it ourselves. And so that makes it difficult to enforce the firework ordinance. And then another thing that is factual is there's a tribal trust land up there where it is legal for them to discharge fireworks on the tribal trust land, where we cannot take enforcement action.
I will say this, though, if people are in the roadway, whatever firework they're lighting off, if they're prohibiting vehicular traffic from coming by and obstructing your roads, those are something that we can ask people to get out of the way, and if they fail to do so, they could be subject to a disorderly conduct charge. I'm not sure if your neighbors actually called us on that.
Yes, they said they called, and while they were outside, the police never came. They even sat outside waiting. They never showed up. But then another neighbor said that they just drove by. They didn't stop or anything. They just did do a loop, and they were gone.
Because typically when we get those calls on the fireworks, we're just going to one after another after another. As soon as you clear one, you're giving another. As soon as you clear one, you're giving another. And it lasts for about 4 hours. It doesn't stop.
Yeah,
And so a lot of times we get the calls, illegal discharge of illegal fireworks. We don't get a lot of details from the call receiver. We then go to the area to see if we can witness anything like that. And when it's not there, when we get there, we clear the call and we go to the next one. And that's, to be upfront and honest with you, that's how a lot of the night goes. If we do make an arrest and we do confiscate fireworks and then we do cite a ticket, that one unit now is out of service for probably at least 35 and 40 minutes. And then meanwhile, the calls. And so it is, we do very much get inundated. And so we do our best to try to make it to as many of these calls as we can. But a lot of them do end up being that. Now, if somebody reports that they were assaulted, we then will contact that reporting person and we'll investigate that. So
They said it came pretty close to that and backed away.
I'd be glad to get with you later and we can try to research the call and
Yeah.
I'll tell you what happened with it.
Okay.
Margot.
A couple of questions or requests. I would be interested, though I don't know how you'd get the data, that on the page in the future where you list arrests made, accidents or cases written, calls for service, that you would list injuries. I'm always interested in the number of hand injuries as I work with parents and other groups and say, is this worth a kid's hand, or sometimes it's even an adult. That would be helpful for me. Another point is I was looking at the regions and I figured out that Yolanda's region, where she lives, is Region 6. Which one, can you tell us the names of the other regions? Because there was one that had a pretty high spike. District 2. Where's District 2?
District 2 is essentially Highway 18 to 277th, Auburn Way north to the Green River. It's our,
Up by 272nd?
yes, it's our largest and busiest patrol district.
Wow. Okay. Oh, and my final thought was, as I reviewed the staffing levels that you had listed, that seemed to be a lot more staff this year than probably in previous years. Am I right, or is that the standard level of staffing that you use?
We actually decreased staffing a little bit this year compared to last year.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, just an arbitrary question, and I know the people that live up in the Muckleshoot area, like Councilmember Yolanda over here, would probably object to this, but have we thought about extending the hours on the discharge area to kind of keep the illegal fireworks out of the neighboring community?
Yeah, that's something we kind of identified this year as a plan for next year, is to keep that discharge area open after the stands close. Last year was the first year that the stands really closed early. I think they, if I remember correctly, they had a fire or something up there and they shut down their stands by 10 o'clock. So everybody kind of left. The fire was in the discharge area, and then this year they ran out of product based on what happened in 2018. We shut down the discharge area early, but the plan for next year is to leave that open significantly longer.
Yeah, from my standpoint, I had the benefit with some of my colleagues to attend the fireworks show over at Emerald Downs, but after that, I went to my home, which faces the south, and I could see Isaac Evans, Lee Hill, Muckleshoot, and all areas in between, which would be in the downtown areas probably, some of the residential areas, and then over in the Emerald Downs area, probably off of B Street. But it was quite a light show, and it went on for hours and hours and hours. And, you know, I think that would probably be a good idea. It might diminish some of it, but a lot of people just, they want to take these illegal products to their house and in their neighborhoods and set them off. And we had the same problem when I was president of 2 homeowner associations, curbing that kind of stuff. And we got into the belligerent side of the business, even though your officers told us not to. But I think we curbed most of it, and it got back to the safe and sane type. But I think that might be a good idea to keep that discharge area open a little longer.
Kind of an interesting note on that from a historical perspective is one of the things that we always worked on with the tribe was finding ways to get that discharge area shut down earlier and earlier and earlier, because we wanted to end the impact that it had on the residents who lived up there.
I.e. the prep people that live up in that neck of the woods.
Correct, and so us working with them, they understood that that was a priority for us. But what has happened is it went so far the other way this year that we realized, oh my gosh, we shut this thing down too soon, because now they get kicked out of the reservation and now they just merely just drove down the hill. I know Dan and I spent, he and I were in the same car up in the 2 up near the grocery store up at 17th and Auburn Way North, and we must have spent a good 45 minutes there trying to get probably over 100 people out of that place. They just took up shop there, and we spent the next 45 minutes just trying to get them, and they just, so we do feel like the discharge area being shut down too soon created it, and we didn't realize it until it was too late. So
It does kind of seem like there's a trend in the last couple of years of people moving the fireworks out of their residential area to other locations within the city. 2 years ago, they really hit the parks pretty hard. The last 2 years, we've been able to come up with a plan for that to minimize it. And then this year, we really noticed that they're moving into the parking lots. Chief said with the grocery store. So our plan next year is now, we've came up with a solution for the parks. Let's try and come up with a solution for the private businesses and see if we can get them on board and kind of reduce that problem a little more.
We'll see you next year.
there we go.
Thank you. I have 2 questions or one request. I believe in Kent they banned fireworks, and I know that in Snohomish County they are considering banning fireworks. I may be using the term fireworks incorrectly, but I would be interested in you doing some kind of neighboring city and region report for us, so that we can see what's going on around us, if that's possible. The other thing is, have we talked at all about working with the Muckleshoots and trying to get them to move the fireworks stands out, say, to the amphitheater area? Now, I am a horse lover, and one of the objections that I have to fireworks, besides blowing off children's hands, is what it does to the pets. But, there's a huge area out there and not a lot of residents. We could circle it with fire trucks, maybe pay an incentive and help them reload, but have we looked at talking to them about being in a less congested area for the sales and for the shooting them off?
As a newly promoted commander back in 2005, I really started to reach out to the tribe and tried to get them to take a look at every option, from improving roadways so we can get people in and out of there a little bit faster, asking them to negotiate their discharge times, and they have been actually very responsive to most everything we've said. I think there has been some hint of it before, and I can't tell you what context that is. My personal perspective is it's a non-starter right now, but I think they're open to talking about anything. We've never formally gone to the government up there and asked them to do that.
I mean, I think there might have to be an incentive or something, but, because it's very important to them. This is one of their major sources of income, and we don't want to disrupt that and their families. But as we get more dense, and we provide them a willing population, it would be nice if we could work on location a little bit.
Well, we worked a lot with their government up there. They're very reasonable people, and we'll just continue on.
Bill, have we ever talked to Muckleshoot about keeping the fireworks out of the neighborhoods? I'm all about, like Largo, safety first, and that's an oath that I took when I became, a council. That I was running under public safety and everything, and what I've been seeing up there every year with the fireworks is just getting worse. And then hearing the story of that one gentleman getting a cone and shooting a fireworks towards a person's home and stuff. Have we ever talked to them about doing signs that says, you know, what goes up? We've got a ordinance already, RCW, that whatever goes up and blows up is illegal, not to be in neighborhoods. You know, because another lady called, she says, I was afraid to leave my house. I was gonna go on vacation. But since I saw how the fireworks were going off in my neighborhood, I chose to stay home. So I'm all about public safety, and if we can talk to Muckleshoots about that, that would be really nice. Thank you.
John? Thank you. Kent has a ban on fireworks, is that correct? Kent is the only city that had more calls for service for fireworks than Auburn. So their calls for service doesn't appear to be
First year.
working too well. The other thing, how did it feel getting out of the office, Chief Pearson, and working a squad again?
It's good. It's a good place to be.
Yes, it
It's a
is.
good place to be. So the officers go out there and work hard, and
keep your hand in.
Yeah. So you know, they know that when they get to work that night, that it is as soon as they put the uniform on and get in that car, those calls start, and they go and go and go, and there's rarely any breaks, and they do it as best they can. They really work hard, and so it's just good to be out there and be around them.
Yeah, I just figured I would be a little contrarian here. I've lived in this city for a long time, 30-some years, and I imagine for folks that live up on the hill, it's a little loud, and and sometimes it's loud in my neighborhood too. But from my perspective, I appreciate the efforts by the police to keep that rumble down to a dull roar, and appreciate the concern that fellow council members have. For me, it's a day, and a few days before, maybe a few days after. I think you all do a good job, and it doesn't stress me out personally. I think that there's other bigger problems that we have in the city. I think we have to probably constantly try to suppress the urge to blow stuff up in our city. But I think that it doesn't bother me as much as maybe some of my other council members.
One other thing is that it won't be too long before the Muckleshoots are going to be building a multi-story hotel. And with those things going off up there at that present location, you're going to get reverberations that are going to go into those neighborhoods that's probably fivefold more than what they're getting now. So I think it's only going to get worse from the standpoint of the residents up in that neck of the woods. So maybe we ought to really consider offering them an alternative location if we can.
Maybe it's my bad hearing. Marco.
That's okay. She's kind of cute anyway. Yolanda and I, only Yolanda and I, have talked about this issue. And I try to support the rest of the council members. And when she initially brought it up, I kind of said what Councilmember Brown said was, hey, it wasn't that big of a deal. This last year was the best year we've ever had. We only had fireworks from the time it got dark until 2. We didn't have any the day before, and we didn't have any the day after. And that's when I researched them. It's a blessing to live 4 blocks from Kent. And so I don't have a problem with, I like to celebrate major holidays. That's a very, very important one. But I'd like to see us continue to work on it and see if we could come up casually over the next years as Nancy meets, with the tribe and you meet with the tribe. If it comes up, and is a natural unfolding, that we look for ways to improve the situation. Thank you.
Good summation.
I would like to see, follow on what Largo said, report on like Renton, Kent, Des Moines, cities around us, Enumclaw maybe, the cities around us as to, do they ban? If they don't ban, what are their successes as a result of banning? I mean, we've got to get something positive out of that. And if we could bring that back at another study session this year, before several of us go on hiatus, that would be beneficial. Also, I lived up in the Muckleshoot area for 30 years, and Yolanda mentioned a neighbor moving out, or not taking vacation, moving out somewhere. We would not leave our house on July 4th. We really wouldn't. Behind our house, we had 3 property families. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of bachelors moved into this one house.
Any bachelorettes?
And they set up a launching pad. And we were, and I could get up on my roof and I could see the launching pad. This stuff was streaming out all over the place. So that's one reason why we didn't move out on a July 4th. So, this regarding banning, it's been discussed around constituents. I mean, we shouldn't be afraid of mentioning the word ban because many people don't know how to get there. You don't know how to get from A to Z equals ban. But man, they do talk about it. They love to talk about it, but no action. And we don't get that many complaints, at least from what I've seen on the council. Yolanda has, but no, the complaints are minimal from constituents, but they do talk a heck of a lot in their little neighborhood clashes, when they go shopping, all these other places. Now, like Councilmember Brown said, he doesn't hear anything down there too much. Well, I beg to differ with him because up on Lee Hill this past year, it was the worst demonstration of illegal fireworks that we have seen in 19 years living up there. And law enforcement, God, we only have a handful of people, and we're not going to cover everything. No way in heaven are we going to do that. But citizens need to advise 911 so we can establish, hey, where the bad areas are. But then there's another problem with that statement I just made. I called 911. I'm on hold. 20 minutes. Then the message comes on. You are number so-and-so and so-and-so, and you will be heard from. Apparently, they have only so many dispatchers receiving phone calls. Is that correct, Bill? Like maybe 20 or 25, something like that?
Yeah, I can't think of
Yeah.
how many. There's
Yeah.
quite a few. On
Yeah.
a night like this, it's going to be a lot of calls.
Right. So, my call isn't being responded. My concern isn't being responded. We've got to find out how to get away from that particular barrier so we can get those numbers added to your report. You know what I mean?
Well, every call that comes in at 911 will always get cataloged in CAD, always.
That's right. But what I'm saying is, I'm on hold. 20 minutes. Finally.
Yeah, typically, when you call 911, you'll hear something like this. 911, what are you reporting? And if you start off with saying, I'd like to report a fireworks violation, on that particular night, they may say, all right, you're on hold, because they've got 15 ahead of you.
Sure.
They're waiting
So
for the other
they're
big
dispatching for this entire region, so they get inundated right? So,
And I respect that. I mean, you guys did a great job out there. Every year you make some changes, and so all of that is important. And I just want to say thank you, and keep up the good work, and see how you can better the program. Lloyd, add one.
Okay.
You know, like Councilmember Bagg, we live in the same area, and he has more of a vista view than I do. But we do see up on the hill and all different areas where we have a lot of blow up and go up and blow up items. I mean, it's just there. Just do it on that. And for me, like Yolanda said, you know, public safety. Many years ago, I was a licensed power technician down in California and did commercial fireworks shows. And at that time, it wasn't done with a computer, it was done by hand using a flare. So know the danger, know what these things can do, and these things are literally bombs going up in the sky. I think one of the things, if it's not being done, it may be being done, but you know, public awareness is always a real key issue for people. And some people know how to handle these things, some don't. And I think all of us may be working closer with the tribe of providing some sort of a flyers or some sort of a program that people can participate in or have in their hand to show how dangerous these things really are. I mean, I don't know what type of accidents we had this year. I know last year, a couple years ago, we had some pretty devastating things going on up there. But you know, sometimes awareness, a little awareness, works better than you know, trying to catch somebody in the act. You know, maybe if they're not aware, or maybe if they don't understand, at least plants a seed in their mind of, you know, these things are really, really a danger. And I think maybe all of us can maybe work with the tribes or work with the tribe a little closer to try and provide some sort of that awareness and make people a little more safe. That's my point.
Margot.
Okay, I have three more. You said that in order to charge someone, you have to actually see them light the thing and whatever.
That's correct.
Can you make it into a misdemeanor like we did identity theft, and then we don't have to do that and we can just slap them with a ticket?
I think the issue is that what Commander O'Neill's referring to is a statute, RCW 1031-100, which is a criminal procedure statute, and it basically outlines when officers can make arrests, whether you're investigating a felony or a misdemeanor. All felonies, we can make arrests based on probable cause. So that means we don't have to be there present, but not all misdemeanors are what we can arrest for, physically take somebody into custody unless we witness it. And there's a series of misdemeanors that we refer to as the misdemeanor exceptions, which means misdemeanors, inherently, you're not supposed to make an arrest. However, if you have probable cause to understand or to diagnose these crimes that have occurred, then you can arrest without witnessing. Like Dan had mentioned, you can base it on eyewitnesses or evidence or things of that nature. Fireworks is not part of that list, being in possession of fireworks or discharging of fireworks. It's not in the list. Now, the scenario you gave, if somebody's got a firework and they're trying to assault somebody with it, well, assault happens to be a misdemeanor and is the exception, so therefore we can make an arrest based on that. But merely being in possession or shooting it is not an exception.
My second comment is, I want to make sure that I'm real clear on my support of the Muckleshoot tribe and their ability to raise money, so that when you're canvassing some of these neighbors, they also have tribes that may use fireworks as a funding source. If you can find out how they've been able to accommodate the situation with their use of fireworks, that would be very interesting. And if you can find out what's happening in Snohomish County. My third item is, in the school district, we have snow days that are sometimes as bad as the 4th of July, in that we send out publications with kids telling them what the snow routes are, which channels to listen to for when school's canceled, and still what we would do on those days is bring in about 20 people into the district office to take phones. Maybe what we need to do is set up a phone bank so that when they call dispatch and say they're transferred to somebody who collects more data, so we know the extent of the real problem. Because I think that some people no longer talk to me about it because they've already talked to me about it for 7 years. So I think we need to look at a way where we spend some effort and collect some real data.
Yolanda?
I just want to say one thing in closing. I think, Bill, I brag so much about our police force. We've got one of the best ones, and I say that at every meeting that I go to at Regional Law and Justice. But I think that I hate when our community think bad of our police officers, that they call you and they don't show up, as we heard at National Night Out, you know, some of the people about fireworks. And I think, as Largo and Bill and all of us have been saying, maybe we could do a little bit better on the 4th of July to make our constituents feel safe in their own home, in their own neighborhood, instead of feeling fearful of the people that are out there doing the fireworks. They're illegal. You know, we have a law and they're still doing it and they're still getting away with it. And that's something that maybe we need to really educate, as Largo said, a lot better, and like John said. So that's all I'm going to say is closing.
We need to be part of that team. We're willing to do some work too. It's not a reflection upon you, it's a reflection upon all of us, but we're willing to do some to help.
I could think, some educational videos next year talking about how a 911 call starts on the 4th of July and maybe how long it could take, and these are the kind of resources. And I'm a firm believer in that most people understand how busy we are, but I do know this: most citizens don't want the feeling as though they've been forgotten, and so I'm keenly aware of that, and always trying to figure out how to mitigate that.
I think the biggest hole that we could fill, Bill, is figure out how we can get technology, IT involved maybe, on helping 911. These hold calls are very frustrating to people. And then they go bang and they forget about it, and all they do is they go to the shopping center and talk about how bad our system is. We've got to come up with some way that when a call comes in, it can be reacted upon immediately. We really do. And if we have to reinvent technology to do that, I mean,
We've got the guy.
yeah, we got the guy. But to me, that's the biggest obstacle, is people hung up on calling in. Does council kind of agree to that point? Does any council member agree to that point, that that is a holdup? Or don't you care? Mayor.
So you
Mayor cares.
Well, yes, but you realize that the call system is not the City of Auburn's call system, it's Valleycom. Auburn is a member of Valleycom, but it is not our IT director's responsibility. It is Valleycom, and every one of their dispatch units is being worked that night. Unless each one of the cities wants to spend a whole lot of money on infrastructure and expand the size of the Valleycom call center and all of the IT equipment that is incredibly expensive, you're probably still going to have some issue with some people not being able to get through, especially during the hours of 9 to midnight on the 4th of July. I mean, that's unfortunate, but that's kind of a reality that we have right now. Not saying that we can't look at options, but I just want you to realize that it's not a City of Auburn IT issue.
No, it isn't.
Did you have something else, Yolanda?
No, I said my
Okay, you
final
said
piece.
peace. So council, I guess there's one other thing though that we need to nail down with the police department, and that is, and the mayor. If you were to come back by the end of October with that type of report about banning and what's positive coming out of those cities, by the 28th of October, that's the last council study session in October. Would that, think that might
So
work, Mayor?
we'll look and see what type of prioritization we can put on that. The police department right now is very busy. Not that this isn't a priority, but it is, we will have to look at the dates to see if that is a reality or
Okay.
not.
All right, thank you.
Not gonna commit to it tonight.
No,
Thank
no.
you.
But we're gonna, what, last one?
No, no.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for your involvement, council. Thank you, APD.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay, now we're gonna switch gears and go into item 4, finance, technology, economic development, discussion items. And Largo Wales, council member, will be doing that part of the meeting.
Thank you. And our first and only item at this time is IT. And they're going to give us an update on what they're doing. Thank you for joining us.
Perfect time too, right?
Yes.
Fix the system.
All he has to do is transfer phone.
All right, thank you, council. Mayor Backus. For the record, my name is David Travis, IT Director. I know I've been here, this is my third time in front of you, so I figured I'd come back and just kind of give you an update on some of the things we have put in place in the last 10 months since I started working here for the city. As you know, I talk about my listening. I went on a listening tour in the city when I first got hired to kind of see what are the pain points of our business units, what are the pain points of some of the citizen, the partners, the people that we work with from an IT group. And we have done a lot of changes, and I'll go through those. But one of the things that I think is most important is the team is changing. We're focusing our culture on our culture and some of the ways that we react and how we react and how we work with the business units. And I think overall, if that was my number one priority, I think we've been fairly successful so far in that process. So department changes, one of the things that starting on August 1st, we split the team into multiple parts. We now have a business success team. That team is built up of new business analysts. So we had business analysts, we had systems analysts, and we kind of combined them to make a business systems analyst. Their job is to really be in the business units now, getting away from the break fix. IT was really good at, if it was broke, we fixed it, but we were kind of not so good at helping the business units understand how do they use the technology better. And one of the things that we've discussed and implemented is if the IT group understands how they use technology and they understand their business, we think that we can actually be a little more successful in fixing and making things better. That's kind of the innovation piece of our group. The business units kind of core is to be kind of the advocate. We look at it as they're more entrenched into the business units, let's say Public Works or the police department, they can now have a better understanding of those things and come back and kind of fight for, hey, the police department needs this change, here's why, and they can kind of talk to IT or the technical services group in a different way, where it's not just the business unit coming to IT, nobody speaks the same language, and a lot of miscommunication happens. The other piece that I just mentioned, we created a technical services group, and we've taken the GIS team, some of the customer support team, some of the network engineering team, and just created a team of just people who can solve problems. So any problem that comes in either through a business analyst or comes in from one of the business units, their job is to just solve the problem. So they're not necessarily working on the forward-thinking as much as the business analyst would be. They're more in the trenches of ensuring that our infrastructures are in place, our cyber defense systems are in place, how do we prevent attacks, and they're also in charge of any of the triage that comes into the service desk. So if a business unit asks for something, it would go through the technical services team, and then they would figure out which business unit group would be assigned. Another thing we did as we kind of rolled through some of this, when I first started, we had 108 active IT projects that were being managed by everybody. And it was a little chaotic at times. And it's not to say that anybody was doing a bad job or a poor job in the management of those projects. It was just a lot of people managing projects, and which created a lot of opportunity for miscommunication. And as we looked through that, we realized that we needed somebody who was mostly full-time, just focused on the projects for the groups. We now are at an active of 40 projects, so within the 10 months, we've turned that 108 project down into 40 active projects, and we're able to kind of disseminate and communicate. Now we have a single point of contact for any of those projects. Their job is to go out anytime a business unit needs to initiate something. They work with the business units, the analysts, and identify how they're going to control those projects and control the resources and all those things. The other thing that we've done is we've started automating as much as we can. We are an IT group, we are an innovative group, so we figured from within our own group we should probably look at some of our long drawn-out processes and try to automate as much as possible. And what that does is it frees up people's time from doing the mundane over the tasks that we are repetitive, and allows them to do something a little more beneficial to the city and work on things for themselves that are a little more beneficial to themselves and their long-term career goals. One of the things that we've automated is our service level agreements, how we manage those things. So whenever a VIP or somebody initiates a request into the city or into the service desk, we now have automated tools that know how to disperse that information to the right people. We've also looked at our onboarding process. I know HR has talked a couple of times, as new employees come into the city, old employees go out. That onboarding process into the IT group was taking approximately 4 hours for every employee that we onboarded into the city. We worked with a local business to help us identify ways that we can just reduce the manual stuff in all of that. We've taken that 4 hours down. We're not completely done with it, but we're about 20 minutes, so from 4 hours to about 20 minutes. And it was like approximately 100 manual steps down to 4 manual steps. And those are the things that we're just, as we get better and better that within our own IT group, we can get better and better with the business units and rolling some of those automations out.
I have a question. Of those steps that have been reduced, can you give me an example of a few of those steps that have been eliminated?
Sure. So, for example, working with the HR group, they have a product called NeoGov. So they do all of their onboarding into a software application called NeoGov. Well, that system is capable of sending notifications to other systems. So what we've done, so the current process before we did this, they would onboard or work through their process. They would then go to another page, web page, internal web page, fill out some stuff. It would manually go out to departments. The IT group would put somebody manually into a security group. They would manually create the account. They would manually do all of the things for that user, assign permissions, assign account access, all that stuff. Well, now with the new way that we're rolling that is, as it comes in from HR, we already know who the employee is, what their position code is, and then we can assign it to the right role. And all of those steps of creating the user, because HR already knows their name, we don't have to manually type that stuff into a computer anymore. So once HR initiates that piece, the systems are waiting for some key triggers to happen, and then it just takes it and does it for it. Okay. One of the other things that it's kind of a funner project, the event action based on artificial intelligence. I've talked about it in the cyber defense when I came and talked to you guys about kind of the cyber security pieces. This is truly a system that we've kind of grown to love, I would say, because one of the things it does is it's monitoring all the traffic in the infrastructure, and it's making determinations on what is normal for a user. So any given, any given user that comes into the environment has a normal behavior. They come in, they log in, they go to these types of web pages, they do these types of things. What the artificial intelligence is doing as it's learning is something is not right. This user just did something that it normally has never, it doesn't do. And based on that trigger, it is smart enough now to say, let's block it, let's stop it, let's put it on pause so that somebody in IT or the security group can at least review it. Whereas before, that was a, holy smokes, something just happened, and now we're in the reactive. We're in reactive.
Technical language.
Yeah, that's technical. This is allowing us to be a little more proactive in those environments. So as this artificial intelligence is out there learning our behaviors inside the infrastructure, it's helping us. And we've already used this tool to prevent some pretty extensive threats that have hit some of our users. Nothing that they did intentionally, but it's kind of the wild, wild west out there. You go to a website, you don't know what it is, you download something accidentally, and it could be bad. So as I said, we're down to 40 active projects. I wanted to kind of talk about some of the major projects that we're actually working on as of today. A kind of buzzword in IT right now is called hyperconverged, and what that means, it's kind of fun. You can use it in your meetings, hyperconverged. So hyperconverged really just means taking a bunch of things that were special purposed hardware and turning it into and using commodity-based hardware. So we can buy it cheaper, we can buy it. But the one thing that it allows us to do is scale really fast. So as we need to expand the infrastructure, we can do it without having to have large capital expenses in some of those purchases, which is really nice. So that project is ongoing. We've also started to look at our network topology, doing some analysis on the complexities of how we're connected to everything. And we have seen some scenarios where we can dramatically reduce the complexities. And as we reduce those complexities, all that what it's allowing us to do is troubleshoot faster, fix problems faster, and those kind of things. The more complex it becomes, and that's typical what happens to agencies is over time, when you're in that break-fix scenario, this is broke, we fixed it, this is broke, we fixed it, well, you're just adding pieces, and it's kind of, the monster is growing, if you will. We're also working with community development on turning back on some of the e-Track-It online permits so that they can reduce some of that workload within their groups. And also, some of the buzz that's happening around the city is our security camera expansion, looking at how we can better utilize some of the funding for increasing security for our employees. With all that, do you have any questions?
Questions? Margo and then Ron.
I just want to share that I really understood about 30% of that. The holy smokes I really got. But I want you to know, in the short time that you've been here, I really felt like our information and data and everything is a lot more secure. And I want to thank you. I don't feel like it's over the top where can't do anything. But I feel like I see footprints every once in a while, and I feel like it's a lot more secure. I also like the idea of the hyperconvergence where we're relying less on huge capital outlay and more on hyperlinking all the smart people we have to use different ways to get the job done. So thank you.
Yes, at the beginning you started out with, you've divided your team into different groups. How many do you have in your IT?
So technically we have 19, so that includes an administrative assistant. And we also have a temporary employee who works down in engineering for GIS. But the two teams, so for example, the business success team is 4 analysts and a manager. And then on the technical services team, there's 2 engineers, 2 analysts, and 2 support specialists, and then 2 people in GIS.
Oh, okay. I also like the way you have updated everything, but there's one thing that I do not like. It's when you block certain things, and I try to I go on there and I look at everything that has been blocked, and it's got 3 little categories on the bottom, release, or, I can't remember all 3 of them, but
Just to be clear, you're talking email, right?
Email,
Okay.
email, your emails, yeah. And I tried to unblock them so they can release it so I can see what that person had to say. I can never get it to unblock. What am I doing wrong?
How
So I
about-
just delete the whole thing, so I guess it's not important.
One-on-one and.
Yeah, let's do that, because I just delete the whole thing, because I go, well, if it's really that important, they'll get a hold of me by phone or something. So, yeah, I'd like to fix that if I could. Okay, thank you.
John?
You spoke of onboarding for new employees. Come January 1st, we're going to have 3 or 4 new council members. Perhaps you should put an onboarding class together
With the remedial strand.
with those that wish to avail themselves of it, but on how to use Outlook and Calendar, how to best utilize the technology that we have, how Auburn's file system works, how you use iPhone and iPad, the forms that we have available, and help the new people that are coming on come up to speed. I know the administrative office staff would thank you greatly for that. And you might save your help desk a little bit of.
So I think that's a great idea. What I'll do is I'll work with the other directors and see if we can't come up with a plan.
Yeah,
Don't forget the remedial strand.
No, but it would, I think it would help a lot.
Yes.
We really do want to use the technology, but some of us are less sophisticated than others.
And I joke, and I hear some of my colleagues laughing behind me, but we are actually already working on an onboarding process for new council members.
Oh,
Just to
good.
make sure that they have some of the information that they need to be successful in their new positions.
Baggett.
I think the word you're looking for, John, is neophyte.
Do you mean my tape drive isn't up to date?
It's a $50 word. David, I think you guys are doing a great job. I was just watching one of our favorite shows on TV, 60 Minutes, the other night. And I don't know whether anybody else happened to see it, but it talked a lot about ransomware and ransom. A lot of the cities and a lot of the organizations, hospitals, right on down the line. Small cities, 12,000 population, getting hit with all of this stuff, and many of them having to pay to release and get that key to unlock everything. How is our team on the cyber defense and intrusion detection really protecting us in that regard?
So remember, a lot of that stuff, the reason they have to pay is because they don't have an easy way to recover. One of the things that we talk about is the data protected, whatever the data is. And that's not the whole picture. So a lot of IT groups will have backups of their data. Well, the cyber team, or the criminals are taking out PCs. So you figure if we have 700 PCs in the infrastructure and you lose 700 machines all at once, it doesn't matter what the data is backed up or not. How do you even get to the data when all the machines, you can't even turn them on anymore? So one of the things that we're working on as part of our cyber defense is technologies that are wrapped around the idea of whitelisting. And I kind of talked about this in the security update. We do a lot of blacklisting. A lot of IT groups typically do blacklisting, and that's where you have an antivirus that has a known, it's looking for something that's known, where I know this is a virus, this file has the signature of a virus, and it knows how to block it. You try to run it, it'll stop it. Well, whitelisting takes the opposite approach of, what if I don't know what it is? So let me just only allow what's running and I want to run. That's what's allowed to run. So anything that's outside of that list won't be allowed to run, even if it's something that's good. Doesn't matter if it's bad or not. If we decide it's not allowed to run on that machine, it won't be on that machine. And that's one of the techniques that we're rolling through the systems to prevent. But the artificial intelligence pieces that we're talking about that we have in there, those systems are specifically designed to watch for those patterns, to watch for a machine that's jumping from this machine. Traffic normally goes from this device to a server, from this device to the internet. And all of a sudden, this machine is now trying to talk to the computer next to it. Well, that's an anomaly, and it'll just stop it on the network. It'll be done. So those are the kind of the defenses that we put in place. And a lot of these are lessons learned as we watch what happens to some of the agencies and some of the larger agencies. You know, they're big machines to move. They're big things to change. It's not as easy as that. And the reason they go after some of the smaller departments is because they have one or two IT people that are just trying to keep the city up and running. They go after the hospitals because they know the hospitals are going to pay because it's of the embarrassment of losing patient data. Those are big fines. If they find out that you've given patient data and it's been compromised, those could be, not only do you got to pay the ransom and get your IT stuff up, but you could pay fines based on that disclosure. So it's a battle.
You feel our city is pretty protected based on your knowledge?
I feel that we are in a better place. And the reason I can't give you certainty is because it changes every day. The dynamic, the threat surfaces, the things that we need to protect. Every day we get a new security alert of some new device that has a vulnerability. Let's say it's this TV. Somebody in this room, let's say, could hack this TV. Well, if they can hack that TV, what do they have access to? And I'm not saying that the TV has a vulnerability. I'm just saying it could be anything. It could be a digital clock. If that digital clock is plugged into our network, and we didn't think about the ramifications of that, somebody could literally hack into the digital clock and have access to the network. So every day we're looking at these things. Even in people's homes, the big craze is home automation and making everything amazing. Well, every day we're learning that this device has a security breach. The Nest thermometers, or people putting in their house, could be a potential security breach.
Scary.
That's scary.
It's kind of scary, right?
That's
So
Yeah, after I watched that program, I was very suspect of everything around me because of technology.
you just want to turn everything off.
Yeah.
Right. That was my first thought. Thank you, Dave.
Any further comments, council? Here's your chance to really jump in.
This is my item. Any other thoughts?
God!
Any other thoughts? If not, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and I'll turn it back over to Bill.
You did a sterling job, Largo. But she responds to Yolanda or Largo. Yeah, she does. So I'm okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So now we go to the fun part, the council matrix, where all of us at this dais are involved. So I come to 1, 2, and 3 and ask Chair DeCoursey, are there any changes?
No changes, and again, the Metro Bus Barn is dependent upon what happens with Metro and their selection, so that'll be sometime in the future, but we won't decide until we know what they're doing.
Okay, great, thank you. Then we go to item 4. Ms. Wales, any changes?
John, are you aware of any?
No, it's just ongoing.
Okay. And we wait to hear if the mayor may have some items for us later on.
Okay, item 5 and 6, Chair Brown.
Well, item 6, it looks like we already took care of that today.
Well, except we want to continue it.
Okay.
To October, hopefully maybe November.
Well, what I was, as vice chair, what I was going to recommend was identify item 6 as 2019 fireworks update, and then go down to the dates, put TBD, cross out today's date, put TBD, and we had suggested to the mayor October 28th.
And we'll work on
Yeah.
seeing if we
Right.
can make that fit.
Right. So I know many of us at this dais are very anxious to talk about that further, since we're getting short-lived.
I will defer to my, my vice chair on that issue.
Larry, do you have anything further to want to add, or?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. And basically, what the TBD, what it's going to do is, we're going to find out cities who ban in our region, and what are the positives that have come out of their banning, so that we can then maybe incorporate some of their stuff into our processes.
Do we have a consensus?
Do we have a consensus of what I just said?
Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
Attorney happy.
Okay, so last. Excuse me, guys.
Yes,
Oh,
you.
boy. I'm not supposed to get a cold.
Don't do it.
No.
We could talk about the green area wellness and your cold.
So that covers, sorry, you guys. That covers what I was going to talk about on the council matrix. Does the council itself have any additions or deletions or statements?
Yolanda.
I do.
Yolanda, go for it.
I have one. Mayor, since October is Domestic Violence Awareness, the Kiwanis, the Morning Kiwanis, is doing a domestic violence awareness fun run. And we would like to have the city be part of it. We're right now working on it, and we're looking for sponsors, and we would like the city to see if they would sponsor, the name. So I will come and sit down and talk to you more about it, because we're just getting everything together. It's going to start at the hill, down at the bottom of Lee Hill, and it's going to go down to Sumner on that little trail.
Interurban.
Yes. And so right now we're working on getting some nonprofit organizations to come and put their tables and to do domestic violence, and also Children's Home Society and a bunch of other people to put their, bring out and put their pamphlets out. So it's going to be a fun run. It's called the Purple Socks. And so we're really getting excited about getting this together. So I'll get together with you and tell you more about it. Okay.
Okay, council, now that everybody is looking at the clock, and it's not quite 7, so are there any other discussion items? Any new business? I missed those previously. We finished up the matrix now. Yes, John?
Today is National Dog Day, so congratulations to all the dogs in Auburn.
Really?
Yes, it is.
National Dog Day. It's a fact.
It's also the day women receive I was corrected on Facebook that Caucasian women were given the right to vote.
Oh,
I
today?
would not put those on the same level at all.
Okay, so, hearing none, we're adjourned.
All right.
All right.